Let's go.
Welcome to today's show. Please help me welcome my guest, Dr. V. Boykin, a renowned keynote speaker, published researcher, and a distinguished leader in the field of organizational leadership and equity. Dr. Mustafa Geddes, an experienced neurotrauma scientist, an educator, and traumatic brain injury awareness activist. Dr. Candicia Randolph is an international speaker and presenter of diverse topics who transforms education through leadership development, education, and training. Dr. Brandy Wilkins, a healthcare consultant and career coach who strongly advocates for safer patient care and a safer healthcare system. We're talking about Unstuck and Unstoppable. And now, let us welcome our host, Dr. Whitty. Welcome to the Dr. Whitty Today. I'm so glad that you've chosen to tune in. We've got some awesome guests here tonight. We've got activists, we've got researchers, we've got coaches, we've got advocates, we got scientists, but most of all, we have you. So wherever you are, we're so glad that you're tuned in, and we're hyped up and ready to go. We're going to be talking about Unstuck and Unstoppable tonight. So if you're ready, we just want you to say, let's go. Drop it in the chat so we can get this ball on the go. We're going to start off right now with Dr. V. Dr. V, what's on your mind? Let's go. Give us something to pump us up.
I really would like to know why, if we would never take a vacuum to the office and start vacuuming, why all of us are at home vacuuming our home offices. There's something just wrong and not equitable about that setup, Dr. Whitty.
All right. What about you, Dr. Randolph? Okay, I think we lost her here. We can't hear. That's all right. We're all right. You're on now.
Oh.
We hear you now, I think.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, there are technical issues, so I may try to log out and log back on. I apologize for that. What I was going, what I was saying was, mine is probably more so for you than the audience, and that's basically let's go, let's get it, and let's do it. So here's to new beginnings.
All right, Dr. Ross.
So I would just say, you guys listen up, because confidence in the information leads to confidence in communication. So you're going to get some information tonight, and then you'll be able to communicate that information. So be confident, pay attention.
All right, last but not least, Dr. Wilkins.
Yeah, I want to know where everyone is joining us from. So if you could put that in the chat and let us know where you are in the world, I'd really love to see that.
All right, where are you? All right. So like I said, this is the inaugural podcast episode for Dr. Whitty Today. I know that we got it scheduled for 1 hour, but we're so excited. We're so glad to be here with you on tonight that we just want you to know that we might run over tonight because we're that excited and we're ready to go. But we understand if you have to depart, if you have to drop off, we totally get it. But we want you to know that we're excited. We're gonna be here all the way to the end. Now, let's get right into it. So, Dr. Boykin, why don't you tell us what you say? What does it mean to feel unstuck?
I think when we talk about what it feels like to be unstuck, we have to remember what it feels like to be stuck. And I don't know if there is a worse feeling in the world, whether it's stuck in a pair of jeans that don't fit anymore, stuck in a career, stuck with a manager you know does not like you, does not have your back, is not pulling for you. That is what stuck feels like. It feels like the worst thing. But unstuck feels like a taste of freedom. Not the whole freedom, a taste of it. An opportunity to chart your own course, an opportunity to blaze your own trail, and an opportunity to bring others with you. So that's what I would say it feels like.
All right. Dr. Randolph.
I think I'm actually going to piggyback off of what Dr. Wilkins said, and I chuckled when she said, being stuck in the wrong pair of jeans. But for me, I liken it to that OMG moment. And with that OMG moment, it's like, oh my God, I'm no longer in that meeting. Oh my God, I'm finally free. Oh my God, where am I going to release the stress that I've had from being in a situation? So being unstuck is really the reciprocal in that your oh my God has come to fruition. Like I don't have to be encapsulated by the things that were binding me anymore. And that could be, again, in so many different areas of our life: financial, religious, a relationship, a job, a physical or demographic space. So yeah, really for me, being unstuck is like, let's get it. I can do this. I've got the world in front of me, and whatever happened before, it happened, it's over with, it's done. But I'm here to move forward. It's really a newfound sense of not just freedom, but assurance and reassurance in who you are and what you can do.
All right, great stuff, great stuff. Dr. Roz, help us out.
Well, for me, I would liken to give the example of being unstuck. I'm going to but one. The first one is a visual one. Just imagine for those of us who wear glasses, um, you might see green or yellow in the color of flowers, the skies, the clouds, but not until you get those corrective pair of lenses do you see the world in a whole new different way. Now, you could have been looking at the world the same thing for decades, right? But not until you have these correct lenses, a correct way of looking at the world, do you realize how much is right in front of you. And I think that's what being unstuck is. And I will just akin it to action potential, right? So there's something called a refractory period and action potential where, you have the action of a cell where something happens and it goes up, but then there's a refractory period where you go down, you can't do anything, right? And it has to come back to normal before you can have another action potential. So coming out of that refractory period where now you're activated and you're able to then take advantage of everything in front of you. That's what being unstuck is mentally, emotionally. Yeah.
Wow, great, great, great. Come on, Dr. Wilkins, what you got?
Yeah, so unstuck to me is forward momentum, right? You're not getting that barrier, that boundary. You're not getting pushed backwards. You're able to keep moving forward. An object in motion stays in motion. And when you feel like nothing is keeping you from whatever that next step is for you, that is being unstuck.
All right, all right. I like how everybody brought that. I like how Dr. B started off with reminding us first of what stuck means, because after all, we can't get unstuck if we're not already stuck, right? So I think for me, I agree with every perspective about being stuck in a job, being stuck in a mindset, being stuck in a relationship, being stuck financially, being stuck mentally or spiritually, or being stuck physically. And so, but I also like how Dr. Randolph talked about it being set free, being a breakthrough, right? Just breaking free from being bound. So that's great stuff. Now, who has, well, I'm not going to say who, Dr. V, share with us a personal story that of a time where you felt like you were stuck, but you needed to get unstuck.
Okay, well, I would like to be very clear. I'm not talking about my current job because that would not go over well. But there was a time that I had a manager and I just could not build trust with them. I couldn't. I did not believe them because of their demographic. And that's just being like honest and open. I didn't trust them. I didn't see them as an ally. I didn't feel that they understood my path, my route. There was no way I would ever tell them about previous incarceration. There was no way I would ever tell them about previous challenges I had faced in the workplace or personally, including being a stripper. I wasn't going to tell them nothing. I didn't even want to tell them I was in school. I did not want to tell them that I had no degree. So now that I'm 4 degrees past that, right, with a bachelor's and a master's and an MBA and a doctorate, we can talk about it. We can talk about all of it, and I don't have to have that same shame. But when you don't trust, and you don't trust the person that is responsible for moving you through the levels of an organization, and you don't trust them to give you an assignment that, number one, you can complete, and when you do complete it with excellence, that they will give you credit for. And when you do not trust that your efforts are going to be rewarded monetarily, that your reputation is going to be guarded, that your thoughts and your feelings are going to be valuable, it's a terrible feeling. And I think for a lot of people, when it comes to looking at their workplace, there's social support that's missing that helps people feel supported. There's mentorship, there's sponsorship, which is even more important in many cases. There's development opportunities. There's those secret programs that you can't get into. So in summary, right, I would just share that my personal experience is that when you don't have the right representation, the right management, the right support, the right belief, the right encouragement, that is the definition of stuck in a way that just doesn't work out. And if you're a person of color, if you are a BIPOC, Black, Indigenous person of color, it's almost an insurmountable mountain in front of you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. How about you, Dr. Randolph? Dr. Randolph?
I'm gonna leave. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my screen, so let's talk about being stuck real quick. My screen is frozen. My screen was frozen the last time I spoke too, so I'm literally stuck during this experience. I think it's very interesting that we're talking about being unstuck and my screen keeps getting stuck. But when we talk about career in the US, so much of how the American paradigm is architected surrounds people in their work environment. And so when you're stuck at a job, stuck in a position at a job, stuck in a point in your career where you feel like you cannot move forward, you feel like there are no options, it's a miserable feeling. And I have had that feeling multiple times in my life. I remember once when I was in college and undergrad, and my work study job, I worked for the fiscal officer at the School of Journalism. And by that third year, I hated going to work every day. And there's no worse feeling than getting up as an adult, as a young adult, as somebody who has bills to pay, and knowing you just do not have the freedom to move out of that situation. It is disturbing, it's distressful, it is disparaging. But what I would admonish people to understand is that even when you're in the midst of that situation, do not let it dictate every area of your life. And so many people are in that situation, and that's what happens for so many people, is because they're miserable at work, they're miserable at home. They're miserable in their marriage because they're miserable at work, because everything begins to matriculate over, because they have such a trepidatious and tumultuous work life. They go home and don't interact with their children because they're stuck in their career. They're stuck in the office and can't get out of the office to come to the soccer game. And so what I would say is just do not allow the areas of your life where you are stuck to prevent and preclude you from becoming adventurous, forward motion, and just excelling in other areas of life.
All right. Exactly. I was having a conversation today. A person was telling me about how there was a woman who she's an executive, and she posed the question, why can't I find a husband? And so she's stuck. She's stuck, right? And so as you were just expounding, that's what came to my mind was this person is all about, at least from what I was told, this person is kind of dedicated to a career, and so doesn't have much time for anything else. And so it just seems like some reevaluation has to take place there if they want to become unstuck. So that's what came to mind as you were speaking, Dr. Randolph.
Just saying, Dr. Whitty, or they could get social support systems that replace that which a great spouse provides. So they could get grocery delivery service, meal delivery service. They could get somebody to clean their house. They could get somebody to do their laundry. They could get somebody to bring that ketchup to them. So they're like, hey, babe, could you pick up ketchup on the way home? There are other things for women to do that can give them a rounded, full life. However, I'm also married. I also cook dinner. I get it. I'm just saying there are social supports that can be put in place so that person doesn't have to feel that they're out there alone.
All right. Thank you, Dr. V. Dr. Voss.
So I like to shake it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is talk about being stuck from a different perspective. It's normally we talk about being stuck from a negative place and like a burden. But how about, well, we know what a cash cow is. How about being stuck in the position of responsibility, right? You can feel this professionally, you can feel this in a relationship. You take on this burden and you stick yourself, right? Or you put yourself in a position and you take on burdens from other people. So now you're stuck in this role of responsibility that might not necessarily be real. So I think that's very interesting too, because I mean, it's real enough that it impacts your decisions, your actions, and the people around you, but it could be something from having a stuck psyche or mind. You're following an idea that's not representative of the truth just because that idea is comfortable. So not getting stuck in the mindscape of it all, I think is important. And that is not only when you're downtrodden or negative or something bad, but you can be stuck in like the rat race. I grew up in New York City, right? So the being in the rat race like that, hyper productive work, you can be stuck active as well. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up.
Dr. Whitty, do you mind if
All
I
right.
piggyback off of him real quickly?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, he talks about the mental component of being stuck, and you're absolutely correct. I would argue that most people's disposition in life of being stuck actually starts in the mind. I understand that there's a physicality of being stuck. So again, if we talk about what Dr. Boykin said, where you're stuck in a job because of your circumstances, but your stuckness is not directly correlated to the fact that maybe you were incarcerated, you don't have a degree, you're Black, you're a woman, you're poor, you're from New York or whatever. It's because we convince ourselves that because we were incarcerated, because we're women, because we're Black, because we're from the Caribbean, because we're from the continent of Africa, because we grew up poor, because we're undereducated, that we can't move to a higher level. Because being stuck is about, again, that whole forward progression of keeping moving, but also elevation. And so we have a psychosis or myopic psychopathy, if you will, that we can't get past the drudgery, or we don't deserve to get past the drudgery. And so therefore we stay stuck.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Come on. What you got, Dr. Wilkins?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're giving a lot of career examples, so I'm just going to piggyback off of that too. A few years ago, like Dr. V said, not my current job, but several years ago, I was in a role that I felt stuck. I felt like I didn't have upward progression in that role. I felt like there weren't people who looked like me in higher roles. And so representation matters. And like Dr. Randolph said, it starts in our mind. I had to get to the point where I believed enough in myself to then take that next step, regardless of, what I might have seen or obstacles I may have faced or what other people may have told me. It does start in our minds. Absolutely. Because we can talk ourselves out of the next step. Even if it's not out loud, because sometimes the loudest voice is the sound that's in our own head, telling us what we can and can't do. And to make that next step, we have to be willing to put aside all those limiting beliefs, believe in ourselves, and take that next step, even if we know we're going to hit some resistance.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I agree, because we are the first ones that hear our thoughts, and we are the first ones that hear what comes out of our mouth. So we definitely have to pay attention to that. I'm an example of that. So I won't stay on that. I'll just keep it moving. But I wanted to say, what about, has anybody been stuck and had to get unstuck from being in that comfort zone? Anybody can take that.
I mean, I'm talking about social support after writing a whole dissertation on social support. I don't think you get any more comfortable than that. You get nervous. Let me tell you about what I do know. I don't care what the question is. Yeah, I think it's okay to retreat into areas of comfort as you marshal your forces to launch the next collaborative exploration of opportunities. Not attack, not collaborative exploration. And I think that's human. And I don't think there's anything wrong to returning to your place of safety and balance and acceptance and love to fortify yourself to go back out. Surely others agree, right? Or is it just me that's saying hanging out?
Well, I think there's a difference though between being stuck and returning to your place of refuge, as you say. I did a lecture 2 weeks ago, maybe last week, something. I don't know. It's all blurring together. 2 weeks ago, the University of Virgin Islands. I did it remotely. And I talked about turning your intersectionality and your passion into impactful research. And so it's obvious that you are passionate about what you did your dissertation on. It's your safe spot. It's your comfort spot. I hope that anybody who's on here that's done a dissertation, a culminating project, a final project, did it in something that they love, because it's with you for the rest of your life, right? And so I use the example of a heliopad. And our intersectionality is a heliopad. You launch from it and you always return to it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But when you are stuck, you refuse to go outside that comfort zone. So many people, and it's unfortunate. When I think about traveling, I'm an avid traveler. I have a goal of going to 50 different countries. And if I use a cultural example, my grandmother, who was from Greenwood, Mississippi, she passed away. It'll be 2 years in June. When I would tell her the places I was going to, she would give me the craziest responses. Like I got ready to go to the Riviera Maya, which is in Mexico. And she says, aren't they shooting there? Well, Grandma, they shoot here. Like, I mean, I'm from Chicago, and not that we shoot every day, all day in Chicago, but that's what the news likes to pontificate, right? So what's the difference between their shooting and our shooting? Or, when I went to Indonesia, she was like, well, somebody has to have sense enough to be worried because you don't have any sense, right? Because of our intersectionality and our cultural and just demographic experiences, our stuckness creates an insurmountable fear to go places. And when I think about traveling, so many Black Americans who are of the older generation are not trying to leave the US because it's an unknown world. And they've created this mental barrier that the rest of the world is some horrible place. And then there's that media part that's put out there that everybody hates Black people. And so it's like, well, if I go to this country or this country, will I be accepted? And then there's a whole everybody hates Americans, which that's a little more true because Americans are spoiled and they want things their way. And so when people realize you're American, sometimes in another country, it's like, oh, you're an American, and they assume that you want things in their way. But all of these factors have created mental barriers to us exploring the rest of what God created. And so always returning to your safe space, that's cool. Whether your safe space is your family, a mental idea, like yourself, I'm a leadership expert. And so I will turn any conversation into a leadership and org development conversation. If you talk to me long enough, we're either going to talk about God or we're talking about leadership and org development. That's like it. We're there. And then if you give me enough time, we're going to, weave in Black people and the atrocities against us. That's my intellectual safe space. That's my emotional safe space. That's who I am. And that's okay for me to return to that. But I can't be so fortified with leadership or development that if somebody says, for instance, I recently was offered an opportunity to sit on an editorial board. Subject matter has nothing to do with any of the 4 degrees that I have. If I were mentally stuck, I would say, no, I can't do that because I'm not properly equipped, right? And so I think becoming unstuck has more to do with shifting our paradigm and retraining ourselves on not to be so fearful of what we don't know, what we think we're not equipped to do, what we don't necessarily have credentials in, what looks different, what tastes different. Because let me tell you, I would be starving if I did not eat, if I was that afraid when I went to some other countries, because some of that stuff just doesn't look like what we eat, right? But you have to become transformative in your own mind, right? You have to learn how to take the daily nuanced episodic version of who you are and be willing to put it in a jar and shake it and then let the particles separate so that it goes into like little individual bubbles and beings and then form something different.
Well, I tell you what, Dr. Randolph, you were tiptoeing and tapping on my toes with that. I tell you, if I can be quite frank, I told somebody that I was stuck because I had set so many dates on when I was going to launch this podcast. It was date after date, month after month, week after week. And I would keep telling myself, well, I don't know if this is the right time, or I don't know if I have the right team, or and I don't know if anybody's going to want to be a guest on the show. And I just came up with all kinds of reasons. And then one day, as I was just walking around, as you said, that paradigm shift said, you know what? Forget all of that. Launch it. Go for it. And so I had to become unstuck. And that getting unstuck helped this podcast launch today. So that's what popped in my head as you were elaborating on your point. So I just want to thank you for that, and thank everybody for your point. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause right here. We're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back. We want you to stay focused. We want you to stay fired up, and we want you to stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Dr. Candicia Randolph's book, The Black American Church, Leadership Dispensation and Challenges, critically examines leadership within the Black church, drawing from historical and anthropological perspectives. It identifies challenges faced by this vital institution in the Black American community and proposes practical solutions. The church's impact on Black culture and leadership is explored, emphasizing its historical context and influence over nearly 5 centuries. Through research and data, the manuscript aims to enhance the church's effectiveness and cultural relevance. Get your copy where books are sold today. Join us as we host Dr. Anika James, a native of Bronx, New York. As a leading voice in the field of diversity, equity, equality, inclusion, and accessibility, Dr. James is committed to fostering inclusivity and empowerment within diverse communities. Her blend of academic expertise and personal experiences continues to make a profound impact on the journey toward a more equitable and inclusive society. You don't want to miss it.
All right. Is everybody still ready to go? All right.
How about that book, though? How about that book?
I tell you, we're so excited. Hats off to Dr. Randolph. I will tell you that book is also available at www.drwhitty.org. So get your copy of that book where books are sold. It's also on Amazon. So please take advantage of that resource. And we're going to move right into the next point. We talked about stuck, and we talked about being unstuck. Now we want to talk about what unstoppable means. And we're going to kick it off with you, Dr. Roz. We want you to tell us, what does it mean to be unstoppable?
Wow. Here we go. So to be unstoppable, man, There's a number of ways we could do this, but I think first and foremost, to be unstoppable is first you have to be aware, you have to be present, right? There's no way if you're not aware and present of your situation, you have to have situational awareness is the first step to being unstoppable. The second step is understanding, like all of us here, you have been accumulating experience, right? Whether your doctorate, but your life experience as well. And now you're aware of your situation and you take that experience and realize that the epiphany is we're all creators. You actually can create your tomorrow, right? And that's once you have that realization, you become unstoppable. Once you realize that you can literally, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to slow this down. So we're having this conversation right now. So as a neuroscientist, right, I'm having words, I'm speaking, you guys are hearing. As we're talking, you're having thoughts. My words are affecting your brain. It's impacting your brain. And if you think about it enough, it's going to create a memory. So my words are actually physically changing your brain, right? So I understand and know that. I realize it goes beyond that. It goes to the physical world. So if I say I want to create something, I realize I can literally create that thing. So being unstoppable is coming to that epiphany and realization that we are here and now, and your being is the conduit to change.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rice. Bring it, Dr. V.
I, I don't mean this to sound flippant, but isn't being unstoppable the Black experience? I know as a Black woman, it is. I mean, is there I didn't know there was a choice to stop. Like, there's nobody coming by the side of the road to pick us up. There's no, in many cases, legacy money. There's no connections. There's no president, owner, CEO, all of that. That's like, hey, don't worry, just show up. I got you. Um, and I think that it is that one foot in front of the other. And sometimes we order our steps in a way that is edifying and glorious and rewarding. And sometimes we're moving in directions that aren't as good for us. But I think that there is power always in continuing that movement. And I very much, for me at least, believe that life and people are on a continuum. There's various degrees of good and bad, as you would call it. And I think that finding your true connection, whether that's your spiritual connection, your connection to others, whether that's the Om, whether that's the higher plane, however it works for you. I think that's the part that fuels the unstoppable nature. There is no other choice but to keep moving, just like you keep breathing. Just like they used to think sharks always kept swimming. A forward motion or emotion is 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 the end point. There is no alternative. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take time out to rest and recharge, but there isn't someone coming to save us. So we must continue and we must remain unstoppable.
All right. All right. What about you, Dr. Randolph?
As she was answering, I was trying to look up words to a song. There's a song by Corinne Hawthorne called Unstoppable. And the hook or the chorus says, "'Cause I'm unstoppable." And, there are various words, it says, "I do believe I'm something special. Can't take that from me. So you can say what you want and I go harder. Be who I am supposed to be because I'm unstoppable." And Dr. Boykin's absolutely correct, is that the narrative of the African in the US has, especially the Black woman, has been that of someone who's had to be unstoppable. There was a saying I remember when I was a kid of trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. Trying to make ends meet. If you watch certain cooking shows, they may give you parts of the animal that people are not accustomed to using. And I remember there was this one chef on there who was Latina from Central America. And she said, "Oh, I'm familiar with using this because we grew up poor, and my grandma and my mom taught me how to use every part of the animal, right? You don't let being poor stop you. You don't let being uneducated stop you. If blacks in this country had used the excuse of being black, for lack of better words, as an excuse, we still would not have the right to vote. If we allowed Jim Crow and segregation to be the reason for our existence, or even the guiding thoughts, the civil rights movement would not have happened. We wouldn't have had Reconstruction. In fact, I'm going to venture to say that if we really allow ourselves to be stuck in the mindset of being stuck, there would have been no Nat Turner or Harriet Tubman, who had revolts and rebellions, right? Even if you look at the culturalism, and when you argue the whole assimilation mindset, there's so many people say, well, they stripped us of everything when we came here, but in fact that's not even true. If you look at the Black church, a lot of the songs that we have grown to love, even if you look at how it carries over to hip hop and jazz, when you look at Call and Response, that's a direct reflection of Sankofa, which is the retention of what we brought from West Africa. And Call and Response began in West Africa. It's not an American tradition. And we know that so many of our cultural antecedents have been interwoven into the fabric of what it is to be part of the American culture without giving us the proper designation and accolades for that. And so when you talk about just moving through and pushing through that process, it's like giving birth. You have to push it out of you until you birth a new life. You have to continue to work on an idea until you see it come to fruition. You have to take the separate pieces and begin to integrate them until you do construct something new, Dr. Raj. You have to take the independent variables to create a whole new thought paradigm, or a new theory, or a new podcast, or a new business, or a better and a new version of yourself, or who they think we are as people. And all of that is a part of that process. It's a shifting, it's an evolution. It's a determination to no longer be content in the state of stuckness. And even if you determine, well, you know what, maybe I won't get to wherever the next point is today, but what I will do is move from this very spot. I will get up off of this couch. I will put one foot in front of the other. I'm going to get off of bed. I'm going to call and get some help about my mental status. I'm going to call the doctor to see what this pain is. I'm going to enroll for this class. I'm going to get this book. I'm going to go back to church or the temple or the mosque. I'm going to call somebody and tell them to pray for me. I haven't talked to my daddy in 10 years, but you know what? It's time out for that. We are going to unstick ourselves by just taking the next move.
All right, thank you, Dr. Randolph. That was awesome. And since we're talking about church, as you were talking, I just thought about one of the men of God that I served under, and he said, "You have to be driven, you have to be mad, you have to be," and that man stood for motivated, adamant, and determined. And so he used to say, "You can stop, but you can't be stopped. You got to remember why you started." And so that's one thing that I remember. Even if I could just say, as I pursued my doctoral degree, I had to remember, why did you start this program? Because everything and anything popped up that talked to me, even my own self talked to me. You can't do it. You're too busy. You're not giving this. You're not doing that. Who do you think you are? Just all kinds of things that we can tell ourselves, and then not to mention that other people sow into our spirit to try to discourage us for going after our dreams. And so we have to always remember, why did I start? Whatever the objective, whatever the goal, why did I start? Because every time we remember why we start, it brings us back to the start point and say, nope, I got to keep on moving. And so I tell you, I hold on to that. And so I just thank you for what you talked about. And I want to say that we just have to remain motivated. Go ahead. Oh, see, I was excited.
I'm sorry, man. I gotta jump in here. I need to keep it as realer than real. So with this unstoppable and unstuck, I have to go in now. So we have to talk about this. So I tell everyone I did 10 years in the pen, all right? And that's state that is, right? So it wasn't 10 years in the penitentiary, but it was the Penn. It was Penn State. So Penn State University, Hershey Medical Center. Spent 10 years there doing a master's and a PhD. And we talk about being unstuck and unstoppable. I got to a point where I already got my master's degree. I was a few years in on the PhD. I had no idea. I'm a first generation everything. I have no idea what's going on, right? But I got to a point where my department, I was like the oldest person in the department because everyone's gone on to different jobs and this and that, right? I had individuals who I trained, came up under me, I mentored and trained, and they went on and graduated and got degrees, and I'm still there training, being stuck in this comfortable place of teaching neuroanatomy, brain anatomy stuff to all these medical students coming in. Oh, I'm so great, but I'm stuck in a place and not realizing. And when I did, about year 7, right, I realized for the last 2 years I haven't learned anything. It's been 2 years and I haven't learned a thing. I've given, but I haven't learned it. I haven't grown, and I'm constantly used to growing and learning stuff. So I realized I was at a point where I had to start calling my own committee meetings, pulling everyone together and saying, hey, I have about 2 dissertations worth of data here. I have 8 data chapters, right? Like, this is ridiculous. I need to get out of here. And I had to start making decisions. So when we talk about being unstoppable, I had to come to a point where I realized that the only way I'm getting out of here is if I structure my way out and I know how. Because I got to a point where we're having meetings about the content and the information, and it changed to where instead of you're asking questions for information, they're asking you questions for information about this particular subject because you just spent years studying this subject, right? And bringing new light to it. So you come to a point where you realize you are and you can be unstoppable in the fact that you can determine how your future goes as far as getting your degree. And I say this to say I had to come to a point in a realization of what I already had with me before the paper to go and get the paper, right? So you'll have that before you actually graduate. So the earlier you come to that realization, the better. And the other thing I'll say about this is I remember after all of this, we're at a wine and cheese thing and I'm having a conversation and someone says, wow, through all that hardship and why didn't you ever just quit? And I was like, you can do that. Like I never even thought of like I never thought how can you quit your life? This is my life. This is what I want to do. So how can I quit what I want to do? And then secondly, I didn't even know that was possible. Like, is there an avenue to be like, okay, so I never even thought for 1 second, okay, let's just not do this. You know what I mean? So I think that comes with that mentality that Dr. Randolph emphasized what we were talking about. And that's where that unstoppability comes from. So I just wanted to jump in and bring some real Dr. Life stuff to that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That was awesome. That was awesome. We're going to go to you, Dr. Wilkins.
Yeah, quitting is not even an option, like Dr. Ross said. And I will say that being unstoppable, going back to something Dr. Ross said earlier, is situational awareness. First, you have to realize where you are, what the barriers are that's keeping you from going to that next step. And then it's taking that next step. There may be a million steps ahead of you to get from where you are to where you want to be, but it's about taking that very next step, and then that very next step, and then that very next step, so that you're not overwhelmed and that you can't do it, right? And I think for many of us, there wasn't another option. There wasn't an option to quit. We just had to go. That's what we were taught. That's kind of just in us. I mean, going back to a personal story of mine, when I was in school for physical therapy, And my sister passed away while it was in my second year of PT school. And I was in Ohio going to school, and my family was in North Carolina. And there was a point where I was like, hey, how can I continue to go on? But my father really instilled in me there wasn't an option. You have to go. What else is there? This is your life, like Dr. Ross says. You have to keep going, right? And when you don't have that many people who look like you, who are there to support you, right? Or when you are, when you feel alone, sometimes it's hard to keep going, but there wasn't another option. What else would I have done? Right. So I went back to school, put my head down, got through the work, graduated, all of that. And thank goodness I didn't quit then. Right. And for me, it was taking that very next step. I couldn't think about 2 years down the road or however long till I finish. I had to think about, how do I get through this next step? Grieving my sister's loss. But how do I do this next day? And then that day, how do I do that next day? And the next day, how do I do that next day until I got to the point where I was done?
Awesome. I like how you said that, because a lot of times when we're trying to reach a goal, people get impatient. And so we have to realize that every goal is accomplished through step stages and progressive phases. But a lot of times we just want to jump right from the start to the finish. And so it just makes me think of my time in the military. I would always laugh at the people who would start off our 2-mile run. They would start off like, the road runner, and they would just take off. And I would have people who would look at me because I would always take off and I'd run real slow. But it was because I had a process. I had to say, okay, how am I going to get through this first mile? Then how am I going to get through this? Then how am I going to make it for the second mile? And so I had to do some things up here. I had to talk to myself and say, you can do it, you can do it. Sometimes I had the same cadences. And then other times I had to focus on my breathing. I had to make sure that whatever pain I was feeling, that I blocked it out, even though it was physically harming me. I had to get my mind right so that I can press through the pain, right? And so I just thank you for bringing that point out, because like I said, a lot of times people think, oh, I should be here or there right now, but there's steps, there's stages, and there's progressive phases. And so we got to make sure that we recognize each one of them and be impatient with ourselves. If I can do so real quick, I just wanted to say, as you all shared your personal experiences, one of my experiences of becoming unstuck was when I went back to school, because for years I had told myself, well, I don't have time. I didn't do well when I tried college at first. I'm just too busy. I don't really know if I can do it. I used the online excuse. Well, I can't do online. I had every excuse in the book. And so I'm going to tell you how I got unstuck. I wish I could remember the young lady's name, but I can't. And hopefully, hey, one day maybe she'll see this and she'll tune in and tell me who she is. But I was sitting in my office, and a new sergeant, as we call it in the Army, a new staff sergeant walks into my office, and she introduces herself, and she asked me who I am. So I introduced myself. But the next question out of her mouth was, "Are you in school?" And my response was no. And so in her fashion, she threw her hands on her hips and gave me a stern look, and she asked me why. My response was, I don't have time. And her response was a slap upside my head. I mean, literally. She slapped me upside my head, and she commanded that I get up out of my chair. So I got up out of my chair and backed away from my computer, and she sat down and she navigated to a website. And then she got up and she said, now sit down and sign up for college. And the rest is history. And so that day I became unstuck. And sometimes you become unstuck through the words of somebody else or the motivation of somebody else. Sometimes we can't unstick ourselves. And so that's a part of the reason for this podcast tonight, is that somebody out there is in the audience, they're stuck and they don't know how to get unstuck. And so they have different perspectives that are reaching out and saying, hey, you can do it. You can make it. If you need some help, I'm right here alongside you. And so she helped me get unstuck. And so I just kept on going. And like Dr. Wilkins said, I could not quit. It was not an option. The hard days, the long days, the missed assignments, thinking about whether or not I was going to pass my dissertation, whatever. Quitting was not an option. I was going to go all the way. And if I was going to be told that I didn't make it, I would have been told that, but I was not going to give up on myself, and I wasn't going to give up on my goal. And so I'm just thankful for that young lady. And so that's my story about becoming unstuck. So thank everybody for that.
Pause there. Gotta pause there. Shout out to the ladies. Shout out to the ladies. Hold on. Stop. Full stop. Again, is that not the story? Hello, women, especially our BIPOC and Black women. Just saying.
I'm glad you said that, Dr. V, because I was thinking the same thing. And she said, not today. you're going to make time to go back to school. And like you said, Dr. V, we need people. We can't do it alone. Sometimes it's someone else speaking into us. For me, at that time, it was my dad to say, no, you've got to go back. You've got to finish. And no matter how hard it was at the time, looking back, I'm glad I did, right? Dr. Whitty, now you're glad that she went to school, right? So sometimes it takes someone else just giving us that good kick in the rear to get going.
Yeah, it reminds me of
Can I just
thing. Like I'll get right to you, Doc. But like sometimes we have to have faith in someone else's faith in us, or we have to believe in what somebody else believes about us, even though we may not see it ourselves. And so that was one of those times where, I can't do it. And so it took whatever from her to say something to me. And so it just went from there. And I hope that one day I'm able to tell her, hey, it didn't stop. It didn't stop with bachelor's degree. It didn't stop with my master's degree, because I never thought that I would go to college, let alone graduate and have I have a bachelor's degree, and I have 3 master's degrees, and I have my doctorate. And so I never imagined that I would get 1 degree, let alone what I have. And so I just thank her for that, because it showed me that I can do what I set out to do. And it helps me to be an example to somebody else. And it helps somebody to see somebody like them do something that somebody else may believe is impossible.
I wanted to, that's excellent. And I'm glad she did. I wanted to piggyback on all of this to just say, for one, because of that little spark, right? We're sitting here right now. And if you look at this screen, I look at the screen and I'm just smiling because I see doctor, 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 doctor. And I look at these faces. These are my brothers and sisters, right? Not just in skin color, but in experience, right? In the here and now of and so when I see that, that makes me feel so good. But I also want to add the other part of this thing, right? um the streets is watching. Everybody know what that means, right? And I say that to say that, yes, when that young lady spoke to you and that little spark in that moment, right? There's people around that. You're directly linked to that, but there's always people listening, the children, they're listening, they're watching. So the reason I pump this Dr. Ross, really a scientist all the time, and everybody thinks it's not for me. It's for them, right? Because we look like them, we act like them, we are them, we created them. Those are our children. They have to understand and realize that no matter the education and experience, I might not be running around Harlem in the South Bronx anymore, but I'm still that guy. You know what I mean? Like to be able to bring everything, that passion that I had back then and everything that I've went through in schooling and all that stuff, is to feed back into not only where I come from and places like that. And here in America, Jamaica, places I'd never been to in Africa, you know what I mean? So my whole point, I'm saying this to say that these experiences and that interaction, we have to be that young lady, right? Sparking the next you. And it's important to play that role as well, not only to be sparked, but also to spark. I think it's Dr. Whitty frozen there.
It appears that way.
Okay, Dr. Randolph,
We got him.
bring it home, bring it home.
Okay, well, I was going to piggyback anyway. Oh, he got kicked out. Well, I
Our
had
show
another
now.
comment. Right, it's our show, so we'll wait till he comes back to his own show. How about that? But I wanted to be sure, as I listened to all of you all talk about pushing through the adversity. So if I were to summarize it, pushing through the adversity, I definitely agree that we have to push through the adversity. In fact, a book that I co-authored with Dr. Turner, who was on earlier, called The Doctor Talker. In the chapter that I wrote, I talk about the fact that in pursuing a doctorate degree, life is going to happen. There's a lot of life that happened to me, to my colleagues, my classmates, people who's one person, her mom died. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, Dr. Wilkins, hats off to you because you went back, you pushed through your sister's death. I just don't feel like I'm that person who's pushing through anybody's degree. If my mama, sister, niece, grandparent, and I'm grateful that, in my situation, my grandmother actually died 3 months after I got the call that I was Dr. Randolph, because God knew I could not deal with it before I finished, right? But I want to make sure that people understand and that I make a discernment between stopping and being stuck, pressing pause and pushing through. Because I think one of the things that happens in this country that says you're supposed to work 40 hours a week, but then if you salary, you're exempt, so you can really work 75 hours a week. We're not going to give you any more money or any more PTO or time off. And yeah, you should really come in on Saturdays. Right. So this wonderful culture that is America, especially being Black people, we are ingratiated and ingrained to push. But there's a difference between pushing through obstacles and circumstances and not allowing the challenges, the negativity, the opposition to determine your future, but still understanding when to press pause. Because that's part of our detriment. Is that because there's so many obstacles in life and so many impedances, we sometimes feel like, you know what, I cannot, this tragedy just happened in my life. I need to take off a semester. Taking off a semester isn't stopping. Taking off a semester is pressing pause in order to make sure you are at the highest functioning level possible, but also to make sure that you're healthy. Because if you are not mentally healthy and physically healthy, we cannot be those sparks and those encouragement to other people that Dr. Whitty and Dr. Roz just talked about. And the other thing I wanted to add, and all of you all have said it, but I just want to make sure people heard it. Surround yourself with people who won't let you quit. If you hang around quitters, you're going to become a quitter. There's a saying, birds of a feather flock together. And if you're hanging around a bunch of haters who don't want to see you elevate and don't want to see your progression and don't want to see your evolution, then someone's going to whisper in your ear, man, you don't need that degree. Oh, what are you doing that for? Don't you already have 3 degrees, 4 degrees? What do you need a better job for? That job pays you well enough. You don't look like you're hungry to me. Surround yourself with those people who will say, get up out that chair and register. Surround yourself with the parent who's going to say, okay, Brandy, I know that it's rough right now, but we will get through it. And quitting isn't a viable answer. It doesn't mean you have to get up right now, but it means that you will get up and that you will move forward. One quick story, since everyone else shared personal stories. My doctoral chair was the chair of a roundtable. I presented at a research conference my first year as a doctoral student, which, by the way, is crazy. Anywho, yes, Dr. V was absolutely insane. And so my downfall is coming at the end of the story, right? So here I am, an overachiever. I had written these goals for myself. By the end of the first year, I want to present at a conference, have something published. Woo, real stupid goal, did not happen. And then I got an A in my first class, so I added to that goal that I wanted to keep a 4.0. These are ridiculous goals for somebody who works 40 hours a week, by the way. Don't do that to yourselves, right? So anywho, I applied to present at the conference, was approved, and the person who became my doctoral chair was the chair of the roundtable that I was in. Well, again, as I mentioned, my downfall. And so the summer semester of school was starting up. Of course, I had work going into that. It was Mother's Day weekend, and we surprised my mom, and we brought her here and took her to play. So that whole weekend was out. Long story short, I was up against the deadline of like having 3 days to get the paper written, the slide deck done, the data analyzed, all turned in, plus an abstract and a bio. And I didn't sleep for like 3 or 4 days, right? Let me tell you that Monday, after my mom was gone, I had been to work, I'm sitting here standing at the computer. I said to myself, you cannot do this. This is just not going to happen. Like, are you going to take 3 days off work? You don't have the PTO. And I was like, no, you can't do it, right? What kept me from just sending an email was that I knew I couldn't tell that particular person, oh, you're not doing it. And so, fast forward to that Friday, she comes to register for the conference. And I told her, I was like, I really wanted to tell you that I just couldn't do it. I had too much going on. And she looked at me and she said, as long as you realize and know that you couldn't have told me that, right? I said, yeah, no, that's why I'm here. She said, okay, great. So we're going to have a lovely day. Having people in your corner who do not allow you to quit, but in that, who demand extreme excellence from you. Okay, in the beginning, my book, The Black American Church Leadership Dispensation and Challenges, in my acknowledgement, I thanked everyone who had been a part of my life who never demanded anything less than excellence. That allowed me to know that not only should I produce an excellent work, but that I was excellent. I was more than good. I was more than average. I had something valuable to offer the world. So make sure that as you are traipsing through life, that you are surrounding yourself with these sparks, with these people who are going to be catalysts for change in your life, with those parents who are going to love you and fortify you and push you forward and not let you just sit on the bed and get a C because, a C is passing. You've got to have people in your life who are really going to fortify you and push you forward. And when they see that your light's gotten a little dim, and when they see that you press pause and they accepted that pause, but then they look up and that pause is 6 years later, they're like, okay, excuse me, what are you doing? Like what are you really doing, right? It is so critical that we have those people. But also, to Dr. Roz's point, after you have achieved what you set out to achieve or achieve some of it, become that person. Encourage that person. Go back to that high school where you used to speak. Take time and talk to that first-year doctoral student. You see somebody who posts on social media, I'm looking at going to Norfolk State, and you know that you're an alum, reach out and say, hey, I got 15 minutes on Friday. How can I help you? All right, we took over the show because you left, by the way.
That's okay. I apologize. Something happened. I dropped off, but I'm glad you guys kept the ball rolling. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to say, Dr. Roz was speaking. I missed a lot of what he said, but I'm going to go back and make sure that I consume it. So I was just thinking about the importance of us paying things forward. And then also, as we pay things forward, we pay it forward, but we let go of the outcome because we can't control it. And so it just made me think about
three young men that I used to talk to and encourage them to go to school as I was encouraged to go. And so a lot of times it seems like people may not be listening to you. People may not be watching you, whatever you might want to think. And so I would have these conversations and I would hear their excuses. I would hear their reasons why this and why that. And, to me, it seemed like, okay, well, maybe they're not listening. Maybe they don't understand the value, what have you. And so, but one of the things that really blessed me was the fact that I wish I could put a number on it, but I can't right now. It was several, I mean, at least probably I would say more than 10 years later. One of the young men had reached out to me on Facebook and I had never heard from him. And then I accepted his invitation and I looked at the message and it was a picture of his bachelor's degree with the caption, "I know you thought I wasn't listening all those years, so I wanted you to see this." And so I say that to say, for those people out there that have accomplished anything, it doesn't have to be a degree, it could be anything. Share that success with somebody, not just the people that look like you, but people in general. And we should share it with people that look like us and then tell them the steps, the stages, the progressive phases that we have to go through, not just that we accomplished it, because sometimes that's not enough. And so I just wanted to bring that point out to just, put it all in a capsule for it to be a good, sweet pill to swallow. So I tell you what, we're going to take a short break and then we're going to wrap it up with our last talking point. So stay tuned.
All right, King.
As a leader, have you ever felt like a square peg being forced into a round leadership hole? Have you ever felt the added weight that comes with being a black man in leadership spaces where you're often misunderstood, minimized, or tokenized? Have you ever felt like you couldn't find your leadership sweet spot? Dr. Ian felt this way for much of his career. Eventually, he realized that black men needed a leadership framework developed by someone who looked like them and had walked a similar leadership path. King, the 4-part leadership framework, is designed to speak to the needs of the black male leader as he continues to evolve into the leader he is destined to become. The King Leadership Framework helps black men walk in their true leadership purpose and is grounded in 4 fundamental principles: know the king within, inspire greatness in others for collective impact, navigate north, and gravitate to great. Departing from King, you will possess a deeper self-awareness and a defined purpose. You will recognize and challenge the mindsets and behaviors that limit you and pledge to strategic actions that will propel you towards your optimal leadership potential. With engaging personal narratives, case studies, thought-provoking reflection questions, and suggested King moves, Dr. Buchanan will motivate you towards transformative actions and crucial shifts in mindset. You can take advantage of your copy of King, the 4-part leadership framework for black men, at www.drwhitty.org while supplies last.
All right. So great, doctors. We're going to bring it to a close here. So we're going to go around and give you a shot to bring it to a close and to keep everybody motivated and to keep everybody inspired. So what I want to ask, and we're going to go with you first, Dr. B, what advice would you give to somebody that's stuck, including how to get unstuck, and then recommending them to become unstoppable?
Oh, just that little question. I would say it's okay if you don't know where you want to go. I found the most powerful thing that I've done for myself is make a list of nightmares when I can't make a list of dreams. The longer that nightmare list gets, the clearer the dreams become, because it's the things that are the opposite or the antithesis of that nightmare. So if you don't know where you want to go, it's okay to just be really firm and really clear on where you don't want to go. And I would say that there are always people around that are willing to help. You won't know who they are until you ask. So if you have 500 LinkedIn connections and you are truly stuck, I expect 500 messages to be going out. Can you help me? And that's the power of putting yourself out there. So I have never refused a 15-minute first time meeting. Never. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one. So reach out to get help. Decide where you don't want to go if you can't decide where you do want to go.
Excellent, excellent. Dr. Wilkins.
Yeah, I don't know how to follow up on that one, Dr. V. That was good. But I would say to really, really rely on your resources, and then set clear boundaries for yourself, because when you are making that move from being stuck to being unstuck to being unstoppable, and you're saying yes to that dream or yes to that path, then you're going to say no to something else. And that's okay, because life is seasonal and there's times when you're going to be able to say yes to that other thing. But I think it's perfectly okay to set those boundaries for yourself, your personal boundaries, to say, I'm moving this direction with intention, and therefore I'm not going to do this other thing at this time.
All right. Dr. Ross.
Okay, so since Dr. Boykin said about basically the buddy system is probably one of the best things, right? So she got that covered. Get yourself a buddy system, but also it's really important to acknowledge, right? You have to be aware that you're stuck, right? You have to be aware that you're stuck before you can even make a plan to become unstuck or to find that buddy, right? But what I want people to think about is this: basically that we're all here, all 8 billion of us on this planet, and you know what? We're not the only one. You are not. You're special, but you're not the only one. Okay, so you can find someone that's going through it. Get that buddy system. Back to what Dr. Boykin said, I think is the most important thing is to get that buddy system and realize that we're going through experiences, but you're not alone.
All right. On the home stretch with Dr. Randolph.
So it's funny. This is actually the only question that I prepared an answer for or even thought about. Only one. There's a song by Donald Lawrence, and in case you haven't figured it out by now, I'm a huge gospel music fan. And it says, it talks about being in the spirit. And if you fast forward, it says, if you need to know God's plan for your life, get in the spirit, let the Lord minister to you. Now, let me make sure this is
one of my favorites, by the way.
Yes, that was TriCity.com album, in case anybody cares what the album was. But let me transcend the Christian culture for just a moment. If you need to know God's plan for your life, a plan for your life, develop a plan for your life, see something outside of the stuckness where you are, get in the spirit, pray, meditate, focus on things above, focus on things in front of you. Let something or someone minister to you. So if you don't believe in organized religion, talk to the counselor, talk to the guidance counselor, talk to that person who's where you're trying to get to. Like Dr. Boykin said, you have 500 LinkedIn connections or 50,000 and you're trying to become a CEO, you go through them and find out who's in C-suite leadership. You know somebody who's really good at creating videos and you're trying to figure out how to do that for your business, hit that person up. Whatever it is, get in a quiet space. Get in a space where it's you and God or if you believe in the universe, you in the universe, you in Muhammad, you in Buddha, you in Confucius, you in whatever deity or philosophical paradigm you ascribe to, get in the space to get quiet and find some direction so that you can move out of that stuck place. And the second thing I would have to say about it is that for those listening, none of us got here by just getting here. Like, we were not born Dr. Whitty, Wilkins, Dr. Ross, Dr. Boykin, or Dr. Randolph. Like, nobody was born that way. There is a process. That process includes some sleepless nights and some tears and some self-doubt. So let me speak real quick to getting unstuck. Doesn't just mean overcoming that self-doubt, but it means embracing it. You have to acknowledge, okay, what if I can't do this? True story. I thought to myself right before I got ready to start my final doctoral project classes, what if I can't do this? Let me tell y'all something. That's the craziest, Lord have mercy. That was actually the craziest thought ever, right? That was, but the enemy crept in for just a moment, and society crept in for just a moment, and the statistics of how many people don't finish crept in for just a moment, and only 2.3% of the world have doctorate degrees crept in for just a moment, and I'm trying to get it done in 2 semesters. Like, none of us got to this platform where we're speaking to you, trying to encourage you and speak a word into your life to help you move out of your current situation. We didn't just wake up these people. It was some work that went into it. And there's daily work that goes into continuing to be who we are. So understand that just because you are stuck today, or just because you finally took your foot out the mud pile to get unstuck, you don't just jump from unstuck to Dr. Wilkins. You don't just jump from unstuck to Dr. Boykin. You don't just jump from unstuck to being a neuroscientist, right? Like, you gotta go through the process. And so after you sit in that space and realize how to go, or where you're even supposed to go from this stuck point, understand that the milestone you're trying to accomplish is not tomorrow. It takes some time. It takes some fervency. It takes some dedication. It takes those people who are going to speak encouragement into you. It takes you reaching out to your connections. It's going to take some non-lucid moments. Like, you're gonna have to teeter on being crazy, or you really be. It's okay. You'll be nuts for a little while. You might come back to the other side of the line, but it takes all of that to get to wherever you're trying to travel to.
Definitely. As Dr. Randolph was talking, it just made me think of one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible that talks about God knows the plans that he has for you. And so that's one of the things that I try to keep in my mind, is whenever I'm doubting myself, or if I feel like quitting, is I might not know the plan, but he knows. And so I just want to encourage somebody with that. And I just want to read this real quick. And it's a quote I just think is fitting for our discussion tonight. Steve Harvey said, "You have no idea who God has called you to be, but you have to hang in there to find out." And so that's what we have to do. We cannot give up. We cannot quit. We have to remember why we started. We have to stay motivated, adamant, and determined. We have to be driven. We have to shift our mindset. As every doctor, every person here tonight said, I tell you, this has been a great show for me tonight. I hope that everybody out there enjoyed it. Before we leave, though, I don't know who may be listening on tonight, but I want to just pause for a second to see if there's anybody out there that want to come up on, want us to pull you into the show to give a relative comment that's related to the discussion on tonight, or you have a question that you want to pose to myself or the panel. I want you to put something in the chat to let me know.
and I will send you an invite to pull you on stage. So we'll wait a few seconds, and I will see if anybody comes in or not. And but while we wait, Dr. V, what's on your mind?
You know better than to ask that. Let me tell you what's on my mind. What is on my mind is the fact that as a Black female who is married to a wonderful, supportive husband, I know I got to go make dinner. I got laundry in the washing machine right now that needs to go in the dryer, and I have a vacuum to pull out to vacuum my office. So the real world is real. Just because you get these higher levels or however glossy it looks, I know I got to make it lunch for tomorrow. So that is on my mind. Those are choices that I've made happily to support the balance within my home.
All right, and real quick, where can our viewers find you outside of DrWhitty Today?
DrVBoykin.com and LinkedIn, Dr. V. Boykin. I hope to hear from y'all. You should know, I really want people to understand that you can actually go from prison to PhD. I want women to know that you can strip and have that be your first entrepreneurial experience, but you can also take that and monetize that in a different way, in a way where you're using your thoughts and your ideas and your intellect as opposed to your body. And that's no shade for those that are still doing that, but there is a path forward and there's nothing to be ashamed about.
All right, thank you, Dr. Roz. Real quick, give us the closing statement and where our viewers can find you outside of DrWhitty Today.
Okay, my closing statement is let go and let God. So you can find me. I'm in College Park, man, right outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm on a mission to bring the college back to College Park. STEM education. I'm looking for collaborations. You can catch me at RASCORP 1911. That's Roscorp 1911 at gmail.com. Get it, your boy.
Dr. Randolph.
You can catch me on most social media platforms. So LinkedIn is Dr. Condecia Randolph .ma, MPA. There's a second page, which is my author's page, which is just Dr. Condecia Randolph. You can also catch me on other social media platforms or on my website at Finer Consulting Service. So that's FINER consultingservice.com. Like Dr. Boykin said, shoot me a DM, send me an email. Let's talk about getting you unstuck.
All right, take us home, Dr. Wilkins.
I'm also happy to connect in the DM, so send me a message. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. You can find me on LinkedIn at Brandy DPT or on the website at definingpointcc.com.
All right. And as for me, you can find me here at DrWhitty Today. You can find me at drwhitty.org. And I'm also located on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and also YouTube. So please make sure that you stay tuned. There'll be more announcements on upcoming episodes. I want to thank Dr. Randolph, Dr. Wilkins, Dr. Roz, and Dr. Boykin. I want to thank you guys for just celebrating with me during this inaugural episode of DrWhitty Today. Look at that. I'm real excited. I'm still excited. But thank you so very much. I'm very humbled. And I hope we do this again very, very, very soon. Stick around after the break just for a few seconds, and then we'll go if you don't mind. All right. Wave good night or wave bye-bye to the viewers. And we'll see you guys next time on DrWhitty Today.
Thank you for joining us on DrWhitty Today. We appreciate your time and viewership. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and most importantly, subscribe. Your support keeps us going, and we can't wait to have you back. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and stay tuned.